I was 11 levels under Vithra hold when the floor breathed out a smell I had never been trained for, and the oldest panel in my service tunnel lit up in a script nobody had used on it in 600 years. My name is Myra Oscalwin. I clear blockages, replace seals, and write reports nobody reads for the Sanitation and Containment Division of Vithra holds under levels. I am not a soldier. I had never, in 11 years on the job, been issued a weapon, and did not want one that morning either. I wanted the smell gone and the lights to stop doing what they were doing. The smell came from Cobbleside's crew, though I did not know that yet. They had been cutting a private freight tunnel under the old Foundation district for 3 months, the kind of tunnel a city pretends not to notice because the toll revenue from the legal routes is thin and everyone needs to eat. They cut through what every survey map of Vithra hold calls solid bedrock at depth marker 41. It was not solid bedrock. It was the lid of a cistern that predates the city's current charter and very nearly the language we speak in. Cobbleside's crew put a drill bit through 6 centuries of sealed silence and into a tank of hollow draft. Hollow draft was never meant to hurt anyone. I learned that afterward, from a voice that should not have known more about my own city's foundations than I did. It was a crowd pacification aerosol, built by an alliance called the Lantern conquered back, when Vithra hold needed something gentler than soldiers to keep a panicking population calm during the famine sieges, engineered to go inert within 50 years. Nobody in the modern records office could tell me why a sealed reserve tank of it had sat under the Foundation district for 600, except that the Concord dissolved before anyone decommissioned its civil defense stockpiles, and dissolved alliances do not file paperwork. What I do know is that hollow draft 600 years past its shelf life does not go gently. It reacted with the modern ventilation coolant the instant the drill opened the tank, and stopped being a pacification aerosol, putting 4 of Cobbleside's crew on the ground gasping within 90 seconds, then climbing through the underlevel air shafts towards 6 residential blocks and a school recess yard, all of it under a flat, ordinary midday sun that nobody at street level had any reason yet to fear. I found the breach because I was the nearest body with a radio. I found the old panel because it was bolted to the cistern wall, and it had started glowing the moment the tank cracked. The drill bit was still spinning lazily on the floor when I got there, kicked loose from Cobbleside's rig, and the 4 of them were already down against the far wall, hands at their masks, eyes wide and wet in a way I had only seen on training films. The smell was sweet first, then metallic, then nothing at all, which the manuals call the dangerous stage, the stage where your own nose lies to you about how much worse it has gotten. I pulled my own mask tight and did not look at the drill again. I am not an archivist. I did not know what the panel was doing. I knew it was transmitting, because the old waveform display I'd seen exactly once in a training manual was crawling sideways across its face in a script our own city stopped teaching 3 generations ago, and I knew enough to be afraid of a 600-year-old machine doing anything at all, let alone reaching for someone. City Containment Command patched into my line 11 minutes later, mask already half fogged, voice already flat with the kind of calm that means the situation is worse than the voice is letting on. They had 4 blocks under lockdown, checkpoints sealing in the daylight at street level, evacuation routes choking on people who did not yet know why they were being told to leave their own kitchens at midday. I could hear, behind Command's voice, a teacher on a separate channel asking twice whether the children should be moved indoors or out, and getting no answer either time, because nobody yet knew which way the air was going to move. Nobody on Command's channel could tell me what hollow draft actually did to a body past the gasping stage, because nobody had a current data sheet. The Concord's full archive had been lost in the same dissolution that left this cistern unmarked on every modern survey. I was still standing over that glowing panel when a second voice cut into the channel, and it was not anyone from Vithra hold. It introduced itself, evenly, as Earth's deplistening array, Specialist Aldous Rain speaking, and said it had been monitoring activity on the ninth lantern band for 6 minutes and wanted to confirm we had a live Concord-era containment breach before transmitting anything further. I did not know what the ninth lantern band was. I did not know Earth had ever heard of the Lantern Concord, let alone kept a station listening to its old emergency frequency for 6 centuries after the Concord itself had forgotten to. Command's channel went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with the gas. I said because someone had to say something that we did not send anything to anyone. The tank cracked. The panel started transmitting on its own. We did not even know this frequency existed until it lit up under my hands. Rain's voice did not change. He said that was understood, that the cistern's emergency relay had been hard-built by Concord engineers to broadcast automatically on breach, addressed to any Allied listening post still active, no intervention required on either end. He said Earth had signed the original Concord Civil Defense Charter as a junior member 900 years ago, that the charter had never been formally dissolved on Earth's side after the Concord stopped existing, and that an overnight roster had kept the ninth lantern band live ever since out of what he called institutional stubbornness. He said it the way a man reads a maintenance log, flat, unbothered, as if 6 centuries of listening to a dead alliance's silence was a line item nobody had gotten around to cutting. I asked him because Command would not, whether he was sending a ship. He said no, the nearest Terran vessel was 11 days out and would do us no good at all. What we needed was not a ship. It was the original Concord neutralizing protocol for hollow draft, which Vithra Hold did not have in Earth's archive. By the accident of being a junior member, nobody bothered to inform when the Concord folded, still did. He read it to us, buffer ratios, venting sequence, the precise pressure differential to crack the underlevel shafts without driving the aerosol upward into the residential blocks, instead of sideways into the old drainage channel, where it would burn itself out against 600-year-old stone built for exactly that purpose. He read slowly enough for Command to repeat it back twice, and stayed on the line the 18 minutes it took my crew to execute it, correcting one valve sequence Command's engineer had misheard, otherwise saying nothing at all. By the time the lockdown lifted, the school recess yard had its son back and its children in it. 4 of Cobbleside's crew were in a hospital ward with damaged lungs, and a long set of questions waiting about an illegal tunnel. And I was standing on the rooftop command post above the Foundation District. The afternoon light flat and ordinary across the checkpoint barriers rolling back open below. I asked Rain, before the channel closed, why Earth had kept listening to a frequency that belonged to an Alliance Earth was never more than a footnote in. He said the charter was never formally closed. He said nobody had ever told the listening roster to stop, and in his experience nobody ever does until somebody finally needs them to. I told him that was not an answer. He said it was the only one he had. I asked if I should thank him formally on the record, the way protocol requires for any outside party rendering aid. He said that was Command's call, not his, and that he'd appreciate it more if Vithra Hold just kept its own copy of the Concord's protocols this time, so the next overnight roster on his end didn't have to read them out loud to a stranger 11 days too far away to help any other way. There was no warmth in how he said it, and no coldness either, the voice of a man closing out a maintenance ticket, and somehow that was harder to sit with than gratitude would have been. I filed my report that evening with a line I knew the records office would skip past, and the next 20 duty officers after them would skip past too. That the Lantern Concord's full civil defense archive, lost to every city it once protected, including this one, still exists, on a frequency none of us were taught to listen for, on a world none of us had reason to expect was still listening. I recommended Vithra Hold reopen formal contact with the 9th Lantern Band before the next sealed cistern under the next forgotten district finds its own crew of diggers. I did not expect the recommendation to survive past the second reader. Recommendations rarely do, in a division that exists to be forgotten until something breaks. I do not know if anyone above me will read that far down the page, but I know the channel is still open tonight, because I checked it myself, off the record from the maintenance bay, long after the checkpoints came down, and the recess yard filled back up with its ordinary noise. Somewhere on the other end of 6 centuries, and however many light years, somebody had left the light on, content to let it burn for as long as it took.